Hey, everybody, welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, what we do on this podcast is talk about what B2B sales and marketing leaders, operators, and experts are doing today to really break through and grow their businesses at exponential levels. Let's get it in the interview. At the end, I'll give you an update on my courses, and you can check out my website at b2brevenue.com, and it's Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Hey, Sarah, welcome to the show. As way getting started, tell us about yourself.
I am a sales manager for a uniform company. Do I say who I work for, or
If
is
you'd like,
that
it's up to
okay?
you.
I work for UniFirst. It's been 11 years with the company, and I've been a sales manager for 8. So
Wow.
how I got there is kind of an interesting story, but that's where I am today, trying to navigate this fun pandemic type of management and working and getting through life.
And what does UniFirst do?
We are a industry leader in uniform workwear rental programs.
Yeah.
So we do uniform laundering, rental, facility services items, first aid, and some stuff like that.
Easy business?
Is there such a thing?
No,
No,
apparently.
no, that not at all.
Yeah. And how'd you get into it?
It's a funny story. So I worked in the newspaper business and advertising for almost 10 years straight out of college. And I got laid off in the slump of 08, 09, and found myself without a job. And hindsight's 2020. I 100% deserved to be laid off. But at the time, of course, I was like, oh,
Superstar.
I'm a superstar. I was absolutely not. So I had a friend who worked for UniFirst and said, Sarah, I can get you a job. I had no clue what UniFirst was about, not a clue about anything. And so I took the job and immediately was like, this is kind of different. Okay. It's right in the middle of not a pandemic, but an economic slump. So
Pick your
it's always
disaster.
something. Yeah. Pick your disaster. So I found that in order to make it at this point in my life, it was a kind of a turning point for me. I needed to really just actually work, which is something I learned in this job. And I had a fabulous mentor. So I got the job with UniFirst out of pure chance. And it just really turned into a huge success for me.
And how did it differ compared to selling advertising? I mean, because both are pretty hard, aren't they?
They're different, challenging, but in totally different ways. So the uniform industry sales wise is new business only. The advertising sales world is more account management,
Recurring.
managing and upselling and keeping. And new business is a focus, but it's not as much, it's not your entire job.
Yeah.
So that was a huge difference. And that is a challenge. I truly believe that people are better suited for one or the other.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to be really good at one and really good at the other, in my opinion, just from my experience.
Yeah, it's kind of the hunter farmer analogy.
Yes, that one's been around for a while. Yep.
Well, somebody's used to consistent, routine, cyclical
Yep.
activity. The other
Yep.
person gets excited over the roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's funny because I think in sales, people are like, if you're in one, you think you're better than the other. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, if you're a hunter, you're better because you go out in there and you hunt, you create your opportunities. If you're a farmer, you just go see the same people and you just use your relationship to upsell. So
Yeah.
I see both ways.
And what was it like starting there? How was the adjustment?
Well, once I got over myself and realized that I deserved to be laid off, then I realized, okay, I have to do something. I am 30 years old. I have to do something. I've kind of coasted through and had a really fun 20s, but now it's time to get serious. So like I said, I had a really good mentor who I actually, right after I got hired, my sales manager left. So I was without a manager for almost 2 months of training. And in the uniform world, they part of your training is riding along with our delivery routeman. So I spent a good time of that entire training riding trucks at 5 o'clock in the morning in a uniform. And sometimes the cold and the heat. This was actually in May, so it was kind of hot, and it was interesting. I still look back and say, and I stayed. Why? But I think it really, it taught me a lot about work ethic right from the start, because I saw these guys day in and day out doing this.
But how did that help you with sales? I mean, you find the building.
Yeah. Yeah, you're there. I walked in, I was like, okay.
This is what it looks like.
So I truly believe that I didn't really have a good sales acumen until I got the training that I got when I started that job at UniFirst. So UniFirst training is second to none. It's very specific, direct. So I was given the training, but then once my mentor manager started with us, that's when it really came to fruition,
Yeah.
because I saw it in action. I had somebody walking me through how to do it. And he had done it. He had been a sales rep for that company. I think that's a huge piece. So everything he was telling me, I was like, he's done it. I trust him. I trust him. So I truly think that's a huge thing that is necessary in sales. For me personally, in my opinion, is if your manager has done it, you trust him more.
Yeah, and plus it's real world,
Mm-hmm.
and everything works in sales on a whiteboard at home
Yes.
office.
Yes, absolutely.
But, you know, what works in front of a client is completely different.
It really is. It's just different in every situation. So to get to see all these different situations and be put in those types of things, you use the pieces that you learned in training, but you make it your own.
Yeah.
And being able to have that, the permission to do that. A lot of people get so, confused with sales training, because they're like, oh my God,
It's
I've got
too
to memorize
much.
all this stuff. There's no way I'm going to remember to say this when I get this objection. So the permission to do it your way, but still within the bounds of, the ethics and the legalities, that's huge.
And how long did it take you to kind of get your wheels underneath you to be able to, feel comfortable doing it and be effective?
At least a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yes. When
Wow.
you build new business in an industry you don't know about during a horrible economy where people aren't adding uniform wearers or they're
But
not spending
everybody's so
money.
nice in South Carolina.
Well, I was actually in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I started in
Oh,
Knoxville,
oh,
Tennessee, and I'm in
those
South
people are
Carolina. No,
completely,
different.
those Yankees.
Those volunteers. Yeah, that's Tennessee volunteers. No, but nice or not, nobody was trying to jump at a program. And, there's a lot of different, in our industry, there's areas that are stronger with some competitors and areas that are stronger with others. So we were kind of up against the eight ball a little bit in that market. So that was another struggle.
Because somebody already has a vendor.
Oh, at 100%.
100%.
Yes.
So you got to that convert them.
You convert the conversion at the right time,
Right.
because when you're in a long-term contract industry, there's a lot of repercussions to cutting and running and preaching to breaching. We don't want to do any of that, and we try to be ethical. So it's a challenge to see the fruits of your work. It sometimes takes a year for those larger accounts, if not much longer.
And how many people would you call on per day?
Well, it's a mode of cold calling, phone calling, and emailing at that point. That was 11 years ago. So email was active, popular. It was good, but
No drop-bys?
oh yes, it was all a combo of all three. So
Yeah.
I would say at that point probably 20,
Wow.
but with a face-to-face something a day.
Yeah.
Of course, scheduled calls are the ideal, but when you start, you're just creating interest and learning your territory. So it's tough.
And, a lot of people haven't had the pleasure of doing a drop-by in person.
The pleasure is one way to say it. Yeah.
Isn't it?
The pleasure, the fear, all of it. Yeah.
And how did you get over that?
Repetition.
Just get used to it.
It's a Band-Aid. And when I try to mentor my salespeople on my team, I understand there is so much call reluctance inside you, the fear of rejection. You can be the most confident person in the world, but nobody wants the door slammed in your face, especially at the beginning. So what helped me was just saying, keep talking, keep going to these same people, or find that one person is going to be friendly. And just go talk to them. Yeah.
Get warmed
Start
up.
there. Get warmed up. So, don't have the first call out of the gate be somebody you know is going to slam the door, unless you just love a challenge and you want that. But just repetition, experience, and my manager doing it with me.
Yeah. And was your manager good at it?
Really good. Yep.
And what did they do that was kind of good? Or they just had a natural
Super,
rapport?
yes, super confident, very calm and collected, charismatic, chatty.
Oh,
Anybody that walked in, he'd just walk in and just start talking to people, and not about what we were doing, just
right.
about
That's
something
the
else.
key. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Last
Yep.
thing, yeah.
So I learned a lot from that.
You don't start with uniforms, you build up
Ex-
the
and you don't even want to call it uniforms, honestly. You want to say something different because people will shut you down if you say the word uniforms, though.
Yeah. And were you that way naturally? Were you naturally gregarious and funny and fun and chatty and
I think, and I'm about 50-50. I think
yeah,
this job created more chattiness and extroversion than I probably had when I started.
yeah.
And
And
it developed with more confidence, I'd say too.
and how long, a year to get used to it? Were you successful after a year or did you
Yes, I
really
started building up at that point, and I made our company's President's Club at year three, at the end of
nice?
year three. So yes, that's about that. For me, that made sense. Year one, you learn. Year two, you execute. Year three,
You
you
reap.
succeed.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that seems to be consistent in a lot of businesses.
Yeah, if it's a long-term contractual type of business, it has to be because not everybody's an opportunity
Right.
to
At
convert.
that moment.
Correct.
And why'd you go into management? You were sick of making too much money or
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, yeah. If I knew then what I know now, just kidding.
foolish
So,
mistake.
yeah. So I was in a cool position because of my manager at the time. Like I said, he was a mentor. He took on a dual role at our location, which in turn he gave me and delegated to me some leadership opportunities at that location. So I was able to lead team meetings as a sales rep. I was able to help train some new sales reps, ride-alongs, all the things that he had done with me. So I started with these responsibilities, and it started to change for me what I really enjoyed. I still like the thrill of the sale part that you get, but I loved seeing things come to fruition for other people and seeing the light bulbs go off. Um, and so the opportunity came up. Me and my husband had discussed that we wanted to live in Charleston. We got married here before we ever lived here, and the opportunity for this location came up. And
Wow.
it was literally a year after we got married, and I was like, let's try. So I interviewed and was offered the position with no experience, and I know they were nervous. I know it was a risk for them.
That and the Southern Charm cast was already picked, right, for Charleston.
This is way before that. This is way before that. I've seen a few locally, and I do get starstruck,
Do
but
you? Yeah.
I stayed at my distance because I don't want to scare them.
That's one of my favorite shows.
It's funny. It's interesting.
Yeah. And it's one of the few cities that I haven't been to. But it looks,
Really,
yeah, I've been to South Carolina. I've spent a lot of time in North Carolina, but never made it to Charleston. I
you
don't know
have
why.
to.
It's
Oh my
beautiful,
gosh,
huh?
there's so much here. History, beaches, boating. It's great.
Yeah.
Great food.
Yeah, I bet.
That's important.
And what was it like that transition? How long did that take to becoming a manager and getting used to it? And
Oh gosh. I would say at least a couple years.
really?
I had not managed anyone. I was managing two locations, Charleston and Savannah, driving back and forth midweek. There's not a rule book or a SOP for how to make two teams successful when you can't spend time with them for long periods of time because you're going back and forth. I was in way over my head, super overconfident. Learned some lessons the hard way, with staffing, with training, with all the things. So it truly did, by the end of the second year, started actually getting our numbers to a point where, okay, all right, we got some traction here. We got some people here. Because for, the training period for this industry, it can be 3 or 4 months before somebody's really producing. So when you rebuild a team and you clear the deck, you got a little bit, and you got to sell yourself. I had to sell a lot myself when I first got there, but it's not enough to meet a locations quota that might have 4 sales reps. So
And I got to imagine that, getting the right people and having them sustain a level of confidence until the business starts to build.
and the trust, they didn't know me.
Right.
They'd
Yeah.
never worked with me. Didn't have anybody to speak for my management style anywhere because I hadn't done it before. It was tough.
And yeah, and then they're not going to believe you until they see it work.
100%. Yep.
Because until it works, it's kind of like mythology. It's kind of like fiction until.
It's true. And in our industry, it's interesting. If somebody, you can talk about President's Club at your location, you can say, oh, our company offers this trip and it's great. But if nobody's ever made it from your location, it's so tough for that to get your team behind it. They're like, well, nobody's ever made it. It's not possible here in ABC City, you know? So it's so important to say, trust me, I promise. Trust me, I promise. We can get there, but you got to get the right people.
I'm sure you heard well, it's different here.
Totally. Oh, well, you don't live here. You're not from here. You're younger than me.
These people, they're
yep,
crazy.
Yep. They'll shut the door in your face. They're not as nice
Our rascals
as they
are different.
Exactly. Exactly. I got a lot of those stories.
And I think salespeople, anybody who's up against adversity comes up with some defense mechanism about why it's not working.
It's never their fault.
Never their fault.
Never their fault. And see, it's interesting. I don't think anybody ever tells you that if you're going to get into sales management, possibly other management, you need a degree in therapy, in psychiatry. Nobody ever told me that part. So I learned a lot of lessons in those first 2 years on that front too.
Yeah, because usually I've seen like the best managers come from either large families where they had to manipulate and negotiate everything.
Yes.
Where they sit at the dinner table,
everything's a debate. Yes, absolutely.
Or people who have a lot of kids, where they have to herd the cats every night.
Yeah, it was. And see, I have no kids and I'm one of three siblings, which I guess a lot-ish. It depends on your family, but I learned the transition from being a selfish rep. And I say that with all due respect, to a manager who has to think about more than just
other
yourself.
People.
Yeah, that was part of the challenge too. It's not my show. It's not my show anymore.
And you have to kind of hold yourself back from saying, just do it this way, your
100%. And that is another thing I learned. So, 8 years, now that it's been 8 years, I would definitely say I'm a lot calmer, a lot more reserved, which is, some of my reps might laugh at that if they heard this, but I mean, truly, compared to how uptight and it had to be so rigid and it had to be perfect and it had to be all this stuff, that's giving people leeway and giving people, that opportunity to learn and to do it their way and see if it works, has taught me a lot, especially during this pandemic where I didn't have a choice. They were on a leash. They had a long leash. They were doing other things. So it was cool.
And have you seen a particular formula or recipe for what makes a great rep at your company when you're hiring?
It's so easy to say somebody who's driven and has a good work ethic, but that is 100% it. And I have been absolutely sold by people and hired them, and they said they were driven, they were all this stuff. But there's something about a person, the people that are on my team have this, it's almost like innate just angst. Like you can feel it when you talk to them. And they come from all different areas. Somebody's going to say, only hire from this company, or only hire people that have had this type of background, or only hire bartenders because they can talk to people. I have the most varied background, but the drive and the inner competitiveness. So I try to ask questions about that to flesh that out. That's the key. I'm not driving these people. I'm not the one that's firing them up every day. Nope.
Yeah, it's not an office.
And I learned that the hard way, because I used to get so exhausted trying to fire up. Come on, guys, you got this. Nope. They got it. They just need me to help them get there. That's what I am here to do.
Oh. And how do you determine that? What evidence do you look for as far as the competitiveness? Is it like a sports background or
Nope.
performing artist?
That's none of that. I would not even say that there's nothing specific in experience or hobby or anything. It is a face-to-face type of interview experience that I do that I can really feel it. And, my HR department's probably going to be like, you don't go by gut. We've talked about this 85 times, but there is a lot of gut in salespeople, and making sure you're not getting sold by them and kind of pushing some buttons to see how they react. And it's interesting.
Well, let's talk about those buttons. Is there
Okay.
any secret questions, or
Um, it's a good question.
do you give them a scenario? Would you rather do this or that? Have you ever been in a situation?
I do some situational stuff. So have you ever been um, in a situation where your product or service or whatever you're doing wasn't a good fit for the person you're selling to, working with, etc.? So I like to hear the responses out of that.
Yeah.
I like to see if they say, I try another way, I ask for clarification, or if I just walk away and let it sit and then come back. So that's an interesting one. As well as, tell me about a time you failed. What would you have done differently? When people talk about that and then they say, I should have really looked at it this way, I should have done that, I'm in charge of my outcomes, I really like that, because then you get somebody who's internally driven and not
Takes
a blamer.
ownership. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I like those two specifically.
Yeah, because that competitiveness has come up with a lot of leaders. And
I can't imagine a person in sales not being competitive. It just, to me, doesn't make much sense.
yeah,
But I'm competitive, so it's probably just that I can't imagine it.
well, where did yours come from?
Not an athlete, never have been. That's an interesting question because I've kind of been analyzing that lately. And I was always competitive at school and doing that sort of thing. But
Grade-wise?
yes, 100%. And my friends
Grades.
used to joke that I used to just try to beat them just for the heck of it in class. But I'm the oldest of three girls. And so everything's a competition in life growing up like that.
What was the age span?
My youngest sister is 6 years apart from me, and then my middle sister is 2.5 years.
Okay.
So between me and the youngest is kind of it's a bigger reach, but I'm definitely a more aggressive, want to win, enjoy the recognition of that win. But it kind of, during my 20s, like I said, that kind of went out the window, and I was like, let's just have fun. So when I'm presented with something that I feel like I know and I can learn, that's when the competitiveness just kicks into high gear.
Yeah.
So I wasn't challenged. I wasn't trying to be challenged at that job before, but this job kind of gave me, if there's rankings to be had, I'm fired up. If my name can be anywhere on rankings, then I am keyed in. And at the other job, that wasn't really part of it. So I think that if I see my name, and the same was at school, they have, valedictorian lists and all the things, where do you rank in your class? So that whole thing, it doesn't stem from anything specific other than I just want to win.
Well, it is
The
kind of
ranking.
yeah, the academic side is the first time it came up.
Mhm.
Mostly I hear it from people played musical instrument, debating came up,
That's interesting. I
athletics
played
comes.
piano, but that wasn't really anything to me. That's not a challenge that you're ranked at, that you can win.
Did you play in front of people, or was it just for entertainment? Or
I played at recitals. I mean, I played for probably 10 years, and I still play now, but now it's more of a therapy stress reliever than it is to do anything in front of people.
And how about like caring? I mean, this is part of competitiveness. It's like when you lose, and it really matters kind of what stage you lose. A walk in, the likelihood of winning is very low. So you can't get too upset.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm still at this point. It's tough when you put blood, sweat, and tears into one of those A size large accounts.
Deals.
The worst thing that could happen for me is that they go with the competition.
Right. The
best thing is they go with us. Neutral is that they don't make a change or don't do anything at all. But it's that one's tough. It's analyzing. It's going back to the drawing board, doing an audit on what we did, doing an autopsy, for lack of a better term. But it's still tough. I need some time to go walk it out. And the reps do too. I mean, they are personally invested.
And that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Because
they've got to be.
If somebody just walks away and says, another day, another dollar, it's like, no, it's
and that's
day.
Another good question for an interview.
Yeah.
You lose a big account. How do you react? So the politically correct question is, well, I just realized I could have done some things better and go on to the next thing,
Yeah,
maybe that's not the right person.
If you don't see them fidgeting and almost going overboard, telling you about it. And you see that it bothered them. That face
Yeah.
turns red.
Oh gosh.
Hair stands up on their arms.
Oh yeah. Foot starts tapping like crazy, you know. You see them shaking, sweating, you know. It's so hard to control yourself, especially if you're in front of the prospect when they're telling you that at that moment. Because you just want to say, why? What happened? What did I do wrong?
How about the interpersonal skills? Because that's critical in your sales, since probably you get almost no inbound, I bet.
Very little.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a referral or two from somebody we did business with, but it's few and far between. The resiliency piece for my team.
Resilience and kind of interpersonal skills, the rapport building,
Got it.
Yeah.
So some people search for introverts. They like people that are technical. My team is a bunch of extroverts. We are talkative, you know, that sort of thing, but very technical at the same time. So building rapport is paramount. My team does a good job of, you know, using an event a trigger event to talk to somebody where it's not about us. We try really hard to make it not about us. So that rapport building and ease of conversation.
Yeah.
If somebody in the interview is having trouble making eye contact and even speaking to me, that's not going to work. I mean, I think it's huge. And, you know, the way we talk to each other to enter in our team is super open, honest. And I think breeding that kind of communication in the team helps them to be that way in front of the customer too. Because I don't want them to be in front of a customer and be like, I have to do everything perfect because Sarah's sitting here. So I make that known to begin with so that they have the freedom to just chat how they prefer to chat. Because that's important. If you're talking like you talk, the customer and the prospect sees that. There's no point in being fake. I see it all the time. I'm very sensitive to sales messages. In a bad way. Like I feel so bad to people who even try to sell me anything because I'm like, no, heard that one. Nope. Turn it back around. Nope. Yeah. So I don't like the fakeness of things. So the being real and authentic when you're building that rapport is even more important than being able to chat.
And have you hired people who don't have a sales background?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 2 of my reps, one I did not hire, she's a transfer, but 2 are straight out of college.
Nice.
Which is rare, actually. So rare to have somebody, you know, be able to come into this kind of industry. It's tough. It's different. It's certainly a lot up front.
Yeah. You know, because I mean, college, I mean, I guess there's some good parts. You're talking to strangers, at least at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And then you meet them and then you get comfortable. So there's a lot of different, if you just speak in front of class, that's good, but not everybody takes public speaking. So you never know what you're getting.
Yeah. And how has that worked out? Has that been good?
It's been great. But a lot of that is on me to make sure that they are comfortable in that transition, making sure they trust me and that they trust me to have their best interests, to train them how they need to be trained. Those are the people that put almost more trust in you than anybody else because they really haven't worked full-time at a job like that typically. Because if they've just graduated college, they might not have had time to start a career. Right. So it's, you know, they worked odd jobs or worked a part-time job or something, but this is their first experience in the real world. So you have to be a little bit different with them and walk them through it a little slower and explain more, give praise more, but challenge them too. And if they make it through that challenge and that kind of pushback, you've got somebody. You've got somebody because, you know, you can look at my resume. I'm like a lifer employee. I've worked like 2 places. I know.
Can't get rid of you.
I know. Trust me. A few of the executives would be like, oh gosh, Sarah, when she starts talking, she never stops. But I think trust. And if you feel like you are respected and trusted in your company, there's no reason to leave. If you feel like you're compensated and given the opportunity to do your job, how you see you need to do it ethically and responsibly, of course, then you're good. If you can move up, if you want to move up, then that's how I see it. So I'm kind of an old school view. I have an old school view on that.
And do you see yourself as kind of developing these people as your role? Because a lot of sales managers just look at it like, let me look at the forecast and the dashboard and I'll yell at them between 9 and 9:30.
Nope. No, these are my people. That's how I see it. These are my people. My job is to protect them from messages I filter those messages. I know how they can react and how they'll take them.
Yeah.
I help them succeed, whatever that looks like, go on calls with them, give them suggestions, give them strategy. We're on the same team. I'm not up on a pedestal and they worship me. I can't stand that. I don't even want them to call me boss. They all laugh. They're like, this is my manager, boss, whatever. She doesn't like that. So a lot of times we'll just, at meetings, this is my colleague, Sarah, and then we just go with it. I want them to be able to do exactly what they need to do without my help. That's the goal. I want to develop them to be a 100% full scale autonomous sales rep, because then they can get to the next step, because that's what was given to me. And I respected that and appreciated that.
And that's the way your manager did that for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is very rare.
It's extremely rare. I mean, he literally put so much trust in me. I don't know why, but he probably had a little test that I don't realize at the beginning, where I came through and I did what I was supposed to. And he was like, okay, this is working. He was also super loaded up with 2 roles and didn't have a lot of option too. So for me, I was like, okay, this proves to me that I like this more responsibility. So that's why sales management, like I said, came into my mind, because I was like, I'm thriving. I like this. I like this. And some people don't. And so I feel like my strength has lied more in sales management versus being a sales rep.
Cool.
And I think there's 2 different types of people, and they aren't all, the best sales rep doesn't need to be a sales manager all the time, and vice versa.
Yeah. I think people are starting to realize that finally.
It's tough. I tell you, there's so many different personalities and ways of thinking out there. It's insane. Cool.
Hey, this has been fun, Sarah. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I need to be more active. But Sarah Dye Greer, and that's probably it, actually.
I write on LinkedIn. You can get me there. If you want to reach out to me at the office, I work for a company by the name of Site Staff Chat. It's SITE, STAFF Chat. You can find me, that's there. And if you get me on LinkedIn, I think my cell phone number is even in my profile if you connect with me, and I answer it. So even though it's 7 years old, I answer it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content, community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.